Many of our children nowadays are accustomed to using mobile phones and tablets and all sorts of devices from an early age. With technology improving daily, there are concerns about the rise of mobile security. So what are some of the common online threats that are targeting children? We're asking this question at the start of the 2023 academic year. Now, let me speak to Ilonka Badenhorst. She is, of course, she's the managing executive of the Wireless Application Service Providers Association. Ms. Badenhorst, good afternoon. Welcome to Today, and thank you for joining us here on Today. It's just like at the start of this year, it's one of those things we might forget to as parents to say, by the way, there is this world, and especially now, because since the pandemic, many schools and those who can afford, who've got access, have been using digital platforms for online teaching. But you are highlighting the need for care to be taken by parents. How can parents take control of what is on their children's devices?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Thanks for having us on the show. So I think, firstly, what's really important is to realize that there's a major responsibility on parents to educate themselves on what the popular apps are that are currently being used, the social media platforms and messaging platforms being utilized, as well as websites visitors, and to familiarize themselves with the risks that each of these apps or platforms potentially hold. Some of the most popular platforms that we're looking at now are, for example, WhatsApp and YouTube, but other things could also include Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, and TikTok. So parents need to look at the risks. And then the second step is that parents then have to educate their children about these online risks and threats. So here we're looking at parents having to have an open conversation with their children about the potential risks and to equip them with the necessary knowledge so that they can navigate safely in this online environment. For example, topics that should potentially be discussed is things like what we call stranger danger. I always laugh, but we're not allowed to talk with strangers in the street. This is also applicable to the online space. You shouldn't be talking to strangers in the online environment. Then another thing that we usually tell parents to look at is be share aware. We should tell our children that they must be extremely careful of what they share online and on messaging platforms. And then things like we need to talk to them about things like cyberbullying, which is unfortunately a growing phenomenon in the online space and affecting children worldwide. Okay. Then the third step that we need to look at, for example, is setting up privacy and parental control settings. This is available freely to parents online. There's so many options, but parents need to read up, educate, and actually install these various things that they can utilize in order to help them protect their children.
Yeah, and what are some of the common online threats that are targeting children nowadays?
So unfortunately, one of the biggest things is cyberbullying and peer-to-peer violence. Here we're looking at each time a child actually logs on to social media or a messaging platform that could be a victim of cyberbullying. Then unfortunately, one of the major concerns is online sexual exploitation. Here children could become victims via the production or distribution or consumption of sexual abuse material and also become victims of sexual grooming. And we've also got a couple of more generalized categories, but we have to look at content risks. So here we're looking at our children being exposed to harmful and inappropriate content for their specific age or developmental age. Conduct risk. Unfortunately, here it's usually where the children's own behavior puts them at risk for things, for example, sexting and sex casting, and also cyberbullying. And then we're also looking at privacy risks, so what we share online and with who we share it with. And then consumer risks, so our children responding to adverts or scams, and then inadvertently downloading things like malware or spyware or ransomware onto their phones or their devices.
Yeah, are there solutions? I mean, what kind of solutions are there online as well that would be available to help fight these kind of crimes and these challenges you're outlining there, Ms. Badenhorst?
So I think the reality is, firstly, we should take a step back and realize that the internet and the online space is a wonderful environment, both for educational purposes, information, and even entertainment. However, we learn to need to navigate safely. There are various tools at our disposal. For example, if we're talking about younger children, parents should make use of child-friendly search engines and child-friendly browsers. Google has a very, very nice safe search functionality and filtering options that parents can make use of so that it filters and blocks inappropriate content and access to inappropriate websites. And then we've got other things like there's also child-specific search engines, depending on their age, for example, up until the age of 5 or up until the age of 6 or 9, which then allows them to only access content and games which is relevant to their age group. For example, Kiddle is a nice one, also Kid Search, and Safe Search Kids is another option, which parents really should look into. And then, as I said, the parental control options and that are available, for example, Google's Family Link that parents can make use of for all Android devices, as well as screen time or FaceTime, family time for Apple devices. So these are all available freely on the internet. Parents should really just read up and make use of these amazing functions so that they can make sure that their kids can enjoy the internet and the online space, but that they do it in a safe environment.
Yeah, and most of the online environment is not yet properly regulated. I mean, just to use a different example, I attended a talk towards the end of last year about this metaverse phenomenon and discovered that it's not really regulated, but only now people who are in the metaverse are beginning to say we need some regulation. And our children are using these devices, the mobile devices, and there's so many apps nowadays that are available, and in terms of regulation, what's your view as an association about how can this environment be regulated in a way that will gonna make it safer for all of us, our children included?
So I think there are great steps being taken in the regulation space to look after this. But if you think about the reality, as an example on YouTube, more than 600 hours of viewable content is being downloaded per minute onto the internet. So it's almost impossible to try and regulate the entire internet. So what they're trying to do is actually break it down in sections. As an example, the Film and Publications Amendment Act is quite relevant. Specifically, the Film and Publication Board play a major role here with regards to the protection of children. They look after age restrictions on all films and things that we view on all of the social streaming networks. As well as age restrictions on things like gaming. I always say that parents tend to forget about gaming and online gaming, and that they should monitor those platforms as well, because they could be exposed to inappropriate content on those platforms as well. So the FPB here plays a big role with the age restrictions. Parents just have to take heed of these restrictions. They are there for a reason, and specifically look at the child's developmental age. So it's very important that they look after that. Then we've also got the Cybercrimes Act that has a specific section dealing with children. Things, for example, like child pornography and cyberbullying and cyber extortion has specifically been prohibited, and it's now in legislation, so action can be taken for any breach of that. Then we also have the Children's Act. The amendments also have now given children a specific right to their privacy and the protection of their personal information. And within the regulation space, we have associations like WASPA, the Wireless Application Service Providers Association, where all of our members have to adhere to a code of conduct, where we have very strict rules on the provision of services and content to children, as well as protecting them from inappropriate content and adult-themed content. And consumers can visit our website for more information there, and also lodge a complaint in the event that they feel that any rules have been broken, and we will gladly assist them.